It was only a week after moving into our new home when the previous owner called me unexpectedly. He told me that my husband had transferred the deed of the house into his mother's name. Hearing this, I was in shock and immediately called my lawyer. I foiled my husband's deceitful plan and divorced him. Evelyn placed a crystal flower vase on the table in her spacious living room. She wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead, smiling with satisfaction as she surveyed the results of her hard work. This luxurious two-story house was her greatest dream, finally realized after years of building her business from the ground up. As an independent and hard-working woman, Evelyn had always believed that results would never betray effort. She had spent nearly all of her savings to buy this magnificent property, all to provide a comfortable home for her small family with her husband, Derek. Evelyn had been so busy managing her import-export company that she had entrusted all the administrative and legal paperwork for the house purchase to Derek. She gave him full power of attorney to handle everything with the title company. Evelyn never had the slightest suspicion about the man who had been by her side for the last 5 years. Derek had always been gentle, attentive, and consistently supportive of her career. His sweet demeanor made Evelyn feel like the luckiest woman in the world, so she handed over all the legal matters concerning the house without any oversight. As Evelyn was adjusting a wedding photo on the wall, her cell phone rang. The name Mr. Henderson, the previous owner, appeared on the screen. Evelyn frowned. The closing and all real estate matters should have been settled last week. It was unusual for Mr. Henderson to call during his lunch break like this. Evelyn swiped the screen and answered the call with a friendly greeting, asking how she could help. On the other end, she heard a long, heavy sigh. Mr. Henderson's voice was hesitant and trembling. He began by apologizing profusely for bothering her and for what he was about to say, which he feared might sound presumptuous. Evelyn suddenly felt a sense of unease. She stopped what she was doing and sat on the sofa, assuring him it was all right and urging him to speak directly. She asked what the problem was. He explained that he had just run into an old acquaintance who worked at the title company where her husband had processed the paperwork. This acquaintance had helped with the filing. Mr. Henderson said he was shocked by what he heard today, which is why he had mustered the courage to call her. Evelyn, growing more curious, asked what the story was about, confirming that the payment had been finalized. Mr. Henderson confirmed the payment was complete, but his acquaintance had told him something disturbing. He said that Evelyn's husband had transferred the title of the house, not into her name or his own, but into his mother's name, Susan. All the documents had been signed and processed. Evelyn froze. Her heart felt as if it had stopped for a few seconds. The air around her seemed to vanish. She struggled to process the words Mr. Henderson had just spoken. The house she had bought with her own hard-earned money had been deeded to her mother-in-law without her knowledge. She told him he must be joking. She had paid for the entire house, transferring the funds directly to his account. It was impossible that her husband would do such a thing. She argued, her voice rising slightly as she rejected the reality crashing down on her. Mr. Henderson swore he was not joking. His acquaintance was the one who printed the final documents. He felt indebted to Evelyn because she had been so kind and the payment process had been incredibly smooth. He said he couldn't bear to see her being deceived and urged her to check the documents she had at home. Evelyn's hand was trembling violently. She thanked him for the information and ended the call, her breath coming in short gasps. Her mind was in turmoil. She tried to deny it, convincing herself that Mr. Henderson had misheard or that the title company had made a clerical error. But an overwhelming sense of curiosity and fear took hold of her. Evelyn shot up from the sofa and half ran up the stairs to the master bedroom on the second floor. Once inside, she went straight to the closet where she kept her personal safe. Her hand still shook as she entered the combination. With a click, the safe door swung open. Evelyn searched for the thick folder Derek had given her 2 days ago. He had told her it was a copy of the finalized deed and instructed her to keep it safe, explaining that the original was still being processed by the county recorder's office. Evelyn found the folder. With bated breath, she opened it and reached inside to retrieve the document. Her fingers touched nothing but air. The manila envelope inside was empty. There was no copy of any document. A tightness gripped Evelyn's chest. Tears began to well in her eyes. The bitter truth slapped her back to sanity. Her husband, whom she loved so dearly, the man who had always been so gentle, had betrayed her in the most cruel way imaginable. Derek had stolen her right to the house she had worked so hard for and given it to his mother, Susan, in secret. As Evelyn stood frozen, staring at the empty envelope, the doorknob to the bedroom suddenly turned. The door opened slowly. Derek walked in with the sweet smile that always graced his face. He was carrying a tray with a cup of warm tea, her favorite. He softly said he made her some tea, knowing she must be tired from arranging furniture all day, and placed the tray on a small table. Derek turned and saw Evelyn sitting on the floor in front of the open safe. His expression changed slightly, his eyes sharpening for a moment, but he quickly put his gentle smile back on. He walked over to her and knelt in front of her. He asked why she looked so pale and what she was looking for in the safe, wondering if something was missing as he gently rubbed her shoulder. The touch of Derek's hand on her shoulder now felt like a burning coal to Evelyn. She swallowed hard, struggling to hold back the tears and the rage that was ready to explode. She looked into her husband's eyes, searching for the lie behind his calm gaze. Evelyn realized the man before her was not her protector, but a wolf in sheep's clothing, plotting her downfall. Evelyn took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. Her mind worked quickly to come up with a plausible reason. If she exploded now, Derek would surely deny everything and hide any other evidence. She didn't have enough leverage yet. She had to play it smart. Nothing was missing, she replied, her voice deliberately hoarse to sound like she was exhausted. She quickly closed the empty envelope and put it back in the safe before Derek could see inside. He was still probing, asking why she had opened the safe and if she was feeling sick. His eyes continued to watch her hands as she locked the heavy steel door. She claimed she was just putting away some jewelry she had worn earlier, but then remembered she had already put it in her vanity drawer. She said she was just overtired, that her head had started to pound while she was arranging the living room. She forced a thin smile. Derek breathed a sigh of relief, his smile widening. He helped Evelyn to her feet and led her to the edge of the bed. He told her not to push herself so hard. The house was theirs now, and they could decorate it slowly. He urged her to drink her tea and rest while he massaged her head. Hearing the words "ours" come from Derek's mouth made Evelyn's stomach churn. The lie was delivered so smoothly, without a hint of guilt on his face. Evelyn accepted the cup of tea with a cold hand. She sipped the warm liquid slowly, her gaze fixed straight ahead, staring through the bedroom wall. A cold war had just begun inside the palace she had built herself. That night felt longer than usual, for Evelyn. She sat at the dining table across from Derek, eating a dinner that tasted like ash in her mouth. Derek chattered on about his plans to buy new furniture for the family room, acting as if he were the head of the household who had financed all this luxury. Evelyn responded only with nods and forced smiles. Every time Derek mentioned his mother, Susan, Evelyn's chest tightened with a barely contained rage. He said his mom would be so happy if they invited her to stay next week, mentioning that she had always dreamed of having a spacious and beautiful home. He concluded that thanks to their hard work, his mother's dream could finally come true. Their hard work. Those words echoed in Evelyn's ears like a painful taunt. All this time, Derek had only run a small-time business whose profits weren't even enough to cover his own lifestyle. It was Evelyn who had always covered his shortfalls, even lending him significant capital for his company. And now, this man was shamelessly claiming the fruits of her labor as a joint achievement to please his mother. Of course, she replied in a flat tone, hiding the plan of retaliation that was beginning to form in her mind. She agreed that his mother always liked quiet places and that they would prepare the best room for her. After dinner, Derek went into the bathroom, leaving his cell phone lying carelessly on the coffee table in the living room. Evelyn knew this was her chance. Her heart pounded as she picked up the device. Luckily, she knew his passcode. He always used his mother's birthday for everything. Evelyn unlocked the screen and went straight to his banking app. She had to see how far his deception went. When she saw Derek's transaction history, her breath caught. There were numerous large deposits, all of which were funds Evelyn had given him as capital for his business. But what made her eyes widen was where the money went next. There were regular monthly transfers of thousands of dollars to an account in the name of Lena. The memo line on the transfer receipts made Evelyn's blood boil. It read, "For Leo's formula and Mom's vitamins." Evelyn stood motionless. Who was Lena? Who was Leo? And why was Derek buying vitamins for his mother, Susan, through this woman named Lena? Evelyn's mind raced, piecing together the puzzle. She took out her own phone and quickly took several pictures of Derek's screen, saving all the transfer proofs to a hidden gallery. She also opened his messaging app and photographed several suspicious conversations between Derek and a man she strongly suspected was his contact at the title company. She heard the water in the shower stop running. Evelyn quickly put Derek's phone back, exactly where she found it. She returned to the sofa and turned on the TV, pretending to be absorbed in the news when Derek came out with a towel wrapped around his waist. He asked why she wasn't in bed yet. Evelyn calmly replied that she had to finish a sales report on her laptop. Derek nodded and went into the bedroom. After making sure her husband was sound asleep, Evelyn took her laptop to the soundproof office on the ground floor. She locked the door from the inside. The night air felt frigid, but Evelyn was sweating from the emotional turmoil. She turned on her computer and immediately placed a call to an old friend, Ryan. Ryan was a renowned real estate attorney, known among business professionals as sharp, intelligent, and relentless in the courtroom. Evelyn and Ryan had been friends since college. She knew only Ryan could help her out of this deadly trap. The call connected on the third ring. Ryan's deep voice greeted her, asking why she was calling so late, and if there was an urgent business matter. Evelyn took a long breath, her voice trembling as she fought back the tears she had been holding in all day. She told him she needed his help, right now. She explained that her husband had secretly stolen her new house and transferred it to his mother. There was a moment of silence on the other end before Ryan replied, his tone instantly becoming serious and cold. He told her to explain everything from the beginning, slowly, and not to leave out a single detail. Evelyn recounted everything. From Mr. Henderson's phone call and the missing document in the safe to her discoveries that night, about a woman named Lena and a child named Leo. She also described how Derek continued to act sweet, as if nothing had happened. She felt so stupid, she confessed, her voice finally breaking as she began to sob. She had trusted him completely, she had worked day and night to build a decent life, only for him to stab her in the back alongside his mother. Tears streamed down her face, wetting her desk. "Listen to me, Evelyn," Ryan interrupted, his firm voice forcing her to stop crying. He told her she was not stupid, she was just too good to the wrong person. "Now," he said, "save your tears. Crying won't get your property back. We are going to destroy them, legally." Evelyn wiped her tears and asked what she should do. Ryan told her to stay calm. She needed to gather all the evidence she had found that night and send him all the photos of the bank statements and conversations immediately. First thing in the morning, he would file a petition to halt the issuance of the deed at the county recorder's office. He would use the grounds of suspected forgery of her signature on the power of attorney document. He was certain her husband's contact at the title company was corrupt, and he knew exactly how to snare people like that. Evelyn then demanded to know about Lena and Leo. She had to know who they were. Ryan assured her he would handle it. He had a network of reliable private investigators. They would start tracking Lena's identity and her connection to her husband tomorrow. He gave her one final, crucial instruction. Tomorrow morning, she had to wake up and act like the happiest wife in the world. She could not show any change in her behavior. Derek must not suspect anything until the legal trap was ready to tighten around his neck. Evelyn, her jaw hardening, promised she would. She wouldn't let them take a single piece of what she had earned. She would make them pay dearly for every single lie. After sending all the photographic evidence to Ryan's phone, Evelyn ended the call. She stared at her glowing computer screen in the darkness of her office. The image of her husband and mother-in-law, who always smiled so sweetly, now transformed into monstrous figures in her mind. The castle she had built with love and hard work had been infested by greedy parasites. But Evelyn swore she herself would be the one to bring that castle down and bury them all beneath its ruins. Evelyn stood before the mirror, adjusting her hijab with slow, deliberate movements. Her face was pale after a nearly sleepless night, but she covered the dark circles under her eyes with light makeup. Today, she had to appear perfect. As if nothing was wrong. When she went down to the dining room, Derek was already there, enjoying his breakfast. He greeted her with a warm smile, a sight that once made her heart flutter, but now only filled her with a suffocating nausea. Evelyn forced a smile in return, served him a cup of coffee, and made small talk as if their world was perfectly fine. After Derek left for work, the smile on Evelyn's face instantly vanished. She grabbed her purse and headed out to meet Ryan. They had agreed to meet at a discreet coffee shop tucked away from the main road. The place was quiet in the morning, perfect for a confidential conversation. When Evelyn arrived, Ryan was already seated in a corner booth with a stack of files on the table. The stern-faced lawyer looked at her with a concerned expression, but his professional demeanor remained dominant. Evelyn sat across from her friend, taking a deep breath to mentally prepare for the worst possibilities she might hear. Ryan began the conversation by telling her he had been working since dawn. His contacts at the county recorder's office had already processed the hold on her property's deed issuance. He handed her a folder containing an official document. He explained that they had blocked the title transfer process on the grounds of suspected signature forgery on the power of attorney. If her husband tried to have the deed printed anytime soon, the system would automatically reject it. Evelyn read the document carefully. She felt a small measure of relief, knowing her house had not yet completely fallen into her mother-in-law's hands. Derek hadn't won this battle yet. Ryan gently touched the back of her hand to offer moral support, reminding her that they had to be patient. She couldn't let Derek get suspicious before the legal trap was fully set. He assured her the title agent who colluded with Derek was already on his radar, and it was only a matter of time before they could bring them all down on charges of conspiracy and document fraud. Evelyn replied sharply, her eyes no longer showing their usual softness. She would not let them take a single cent of her hard-earned money. They had degraded her in such a way, and she would make sure they were shattered to pieces. Ryan nodded in agreement. He then pulled out a small flash drive and connected it to his laptop. He informed her that the private investigator he hired had already found a trail on the woman named Lena and the boy, Leo. They had moved quickly, tracing the flow of funds from her husband's account. Evelyn's heart pounded faster as Ryan played a short video clip on the laptop screen. The video was taken from a distance, but the faces of the people were clearly visible. On the screen, Derek and Susan were sitting in a rather upscale restaurant. They were not alone. Beside Derek sat a pretty young woman who was feeding a toddler. The boy had the same eye shape and curve of a smile as Derek. They were laughing freely, interacting warmly, exactly like a complete family enjoying a carefree weekend together. Evelyn's world seemed to collapse at that moment. Her hands clenched into tight fists, her knuckles turning white. The man who had been sleeping beside her, the man whose business she had always financed, had another family hidden away so neatly. Even more painful, Susan, the woman Evelyn had always respected and provided for, appeared to fully approve of the illicit relationship. This deception was meticulously planned, flawlessly executed, and involved the people she trusted most. This betrayal cut her to the core. The harsh reality displayed on the laptop screen unveiled all the mysteries in Evelyn's mind. It all made sense now. Derek had been keeping a secret second family with Lena for years, and that clandestine arrangement was fully supported by Susan. Their despicable plan was clear. They used Evelyn's hard-earned money to buy a magnificent house, then transferred the ownership to Susan's name. Once the house was securely in their hands, Derek and his mother would undoubtedly find fault with Evelyn, paint her as a bad wife, and then divorce her without giving her a single penny of her own assets. That way, Lena and the child from their secret affair could move into the luxurious house without any obstacles. The boiling rage in Evelyn's chest turned into an unbearable disgust. She spent a few more hours with Ryan, finalizing their counterattack strategy. Evelyn instructed Ryan to prepare a divorce petition along with a police report for forgery of valuable documents and fraud. Everything had to be prepared for a single, lethal strike, leaving Derek no room to wriggle free. After ensuring all plans were on track, Evelyn returned home with her head held high. She was no longer the easily deceived Evelyn. She had transformed back into the tough, calculating businesswoman she was. That afternoon, as Evelyn was relaxing in the living room, the doorbell rang. A housekeeper opened the door, and a moment later, Susan walked in with an air of arrogance. The older woman scanned the room with a critical eye, as if she were the grand dame and rightful owner of the property. She walked over to Evelyn, who deliberately remained seated. Susan addressed her, saying they would hold a housewarming party this weekend. She instructed Evelyn to invite the entire extended family from her husband's side and to handle the costs. She ordered her to book the best caterer, wanting all the relatives to know how successful her son was, buying such a magnificent house. The command in her voice was devoid of any warmth. Hearing such a shameless request, Evelyn had to bite the inside of her cheek to stop herself from kicking the old woman out. Susan truly underestimated her intelligence. But then, a brilliant idea flashed in Evelyn's mind. A grand celebration in front of the entire family was the perfect stage to destroy the pride of these greedy people. Evelyn changed her expression, forcing a smile that looked utterly sincere and obedient. "Of course," she replied, assuring Susan that she would make the celebration the most unforgettable day for her and Derek. She would prepare everything perfectly, and Susan shouldn't worry about the cost, she would handle it all. Her gentle voice concealed a deadly retribution. Susan smiled with satisfaction, feeling victorious that her daughter-in-law was so docile and easy to manipulate. After giving a few more self-serving instructions, the older woman left with a proud stride. Evelyn watched her mother-in-law's retreating back with a sharp, cold gaze. As soon as the front door closed, Evelyn immediately grabbed her cell phone and walked to her office downstairs. She called the director of the financial institution, where she kept all her investment funds. All this time, Derek's company had been running on personal capital injections from Evelyn, who acted as the primary investor. Unbeknownst to Derek, Evelyn gave a firm order to the bank to cut off all those funds. She forcibly withdrew all her remaining personal capital from her husband's company that very day. Evelyn let her husband's business hang on the brink of immediate collapse. Starting tomorrow morning, checks issued by Derek's company would bounce, bills would pile up, and suppliers would come demanding payment in anger. Evelyn turned off her phone screen after her business with the bank was concluded. She stood in front of the large glass window of her office, watching the afternoon sky begin to darken. The great trap had been set, silently and perfectly. She would let Derek and Susan feel like they were on top of the world for the next few days. She would let them feast and puff out their chests in front of the extended family. And just when they were lost in their laughter, Evelyn would pull the rug out from under them, sending them all plunging into a bottomless abyss of suffering. The stage was set, and Evelyn was ready to be the sole director, determining the final act. The morning sun streamed through the gaps in the master bedroom curtains. Evelyn was awake long before her alarm. Her mind was clear and sharp. She no longer shed tears of sorrow. All that remained in her chest was a steely resolve to destroy the people who had trampled on her dignity. Today was the first day of the grand plan she had orchestrated with Ryan. She quickly got ready, putting on a smart outfit and her favorite hijab. After making sure her husband had left for his office, an office now cut off from its financial lifeline, Evelyn immediately began contacting vendors to prepare the grand celebration her mother-in-law had requested. She hired the best event planner in the city and ordered the most luxurious housewarming package available. Evelyn spared no expense. She ordered an array of high-end dishes from a renowned caterer, rented a magnificent air-conditioned marquee tent, and commissioned thousands of dollars worth of fresh flower arrangements to adorn every corner of the house. Everything had to look perfect and extravagant. She wanted Susan to feel like she was on top of the world. She wanted Derek to feel immense pride in front of all his relatives. The higher they soared on their arrogance, the more completely their bones would shatter when Evelyn brought them crashing down. In between supervising the workers setting up the tent frame on the side lawn, Evelyn sat in her office to complete one crucial task. She took a thick, fragrant, blank invitation card. In a handwriting she deliberately altered to look stiff, she wrote a short, deadly message addressed to Lena. Evelyn knew exactly how the mind of a mistress desperate for recognition worked. She manipulated the words in the invitation to make it seem as if it came directly from Derek. The letter contained a sweet promise that Derek finally had the courage to announce their relationship and claim her as his true partner in front of the entire extended family at today's celebration. Evelyn placed the invitation in a lavish envelope and sent it via express courier without a return address. Around noon, Ryan arrived, disguised as one of the audiovisual vendors. The tough lawyer entered Evelyn's office, carrying a briefcase filled with a stack of documents that would serve as their ultimate weapons. Ryan explained that the divorce petition had been officially filed with the family court, and the date for the first hearing would be set soon. Furthermore, the police report regarding the criminal acts of document forgery and embezzlement had been processed with urgent status. Thanks to Ryan's extensive connections, the police had agreed to assign 2 plainclothes officers to attend the party, ready to apprehend Derek the moment the evidence of his crimes was displayed for all to see. Evelyn smiled with satisfaction. Her heart pounded with anticipation for her husband's downfall. The day of the celebration arrived. From early morning, the magnificent house was bustling with activity. Soothing music played from speakers placed in various corners. A wide variety of delicious dishes were laid out on long tables, their tempting aromas filling the air. Guests, all relatives from Derek's extended family, began to arrive one by one. They entered with looks of awe at the home's opulence. Derek greeted guests at the door with a wide smile radiating immense pride. He shook hands with his uncles, aunts, and cousins, feigning humility while his heart swelled with a sense of importance. Susan was no less busy. The older woman paraded around, showing off every corner of the house, narrating how successful her son was to be able to buy such a luxurious home for his mother's retirement. Evelyn simply observed from a corner of the room. She played her role as the dutiful wife perfectly. She smiled, greeted guests, and ensured their drinks were never empty. Not a single person noticed the glint of hatred behind the friendly smile of the woman in the hijab. Everyone was caught up in the festive atmosphere. Praise after praise was showered upon Derek, making his chest puff out even further. He even put his arm around Evelyn a few times in front of relatives, praising her as a good partner, a nauseating charade that made Evelyn want to scrub her skin clean. The main event finally began when Susan tapped her champagne glass with a spoon, demanding everyone's attention for a toast. Standing in the center of the room, she spoke with great confidence. She cleared her throat and began weaving a speech full of arrogance, speaking of her difficult childhood, and contrasting it with the incredible success her son had achieved. She repeatedly emphasized that this house was tangible proof of a son's devotion to his mother. The guests applauded enthusiastically. Derek bowed his head with a bashful smile, savoring every second of the adulation. But in the midst of Susan's fiery toast, the attention of some guests near the main entrance was suddenly diverted. A taxi pulled up right in front of the wide-open gate. The door opened, and a young woman stepped out confidently. She was wearing a flashy, luxurious dress. Her makeup was heavy, and her hair was perfectly styled. She held the hand of a young boy, dressed in a neat little suit. The woman walked across the lawn, ignoring the curious stares from guests on the patio, and strode directly into the house. The theatrics had reached their climax, and the uninvited guest had finally arrived to answer the call of her own destruction. The atmosphere in the living room, once filled with laughter and applause, suddenly fell silent. Susan's speech halted mid-sentence as her eyes locked onto the young woman standing in the doorway. Susan's heart felt like it stopped. Her mouth hung open, unable to utter a word. Derek, standing not far from his mother, turned pale. His face, which had been beaming with pride just moments before, now looked ghostly. His eyes widened in horror as he saw Lena and their son, Leo, standing before his entire extended family. A cold sweat poured down his forehead. He instinctively took a step back, his hands trembling as he realized the catastrophe that had just walked through his door. Lena, completely unaware of the tension in the room, flashed her sweetest smile. Holding the anonymous invitation in her purse, she was certain that today was the day Derek would elevate her status and acknowledge her as his legitimate partner in front of everyone. Without the slightest hesitation, Lena walked forward through the crowd of bewildered relatives. She looked straight at Derek with a triumphant gaze and called out in a voice loud enough to echo through the room. "Honey, I'm sorry I'm a little late. Leo was so fussy while I was getting him dressed. But we're here now. Let's tell everyone the good news." Lena's statement was like a bolt of lightning on a clear day. Whispers erupted among the guests. Family members exchanged confused and disbelieving glances. A husband? Why was this stranger calling Derek honey and acting like his wife in front of Evelyn and all the relatives? Susan, overwhelmed by panic, rushed towards Lena. She grabbed Lena's arm roughly, trying to push her out of the room before their sordid secret was exposed any further. "What are you doing here? Go home, now. Don't make a scene," Susan hissed, her eyes glaring menacingly at Lena. Lena violently shook off Susan's hand, offended by her mother-in-law's rough treatment. "What do you mean? Derek himself invited me here to announce our relationship. I'm done hiding in the shadows." Lena shrieked, her high-pitched voice cutting through the commotion. It was in the midst of this escalating chaos that Evelyn stepped forward with the grace of a queen ready to behead her traitors. Her face was serene, without a trace of panic. She walked up to Susan, silencing the older woman with an icy glare. Evelyn stood in the center of the room, looking at each of her husband's family members one by one, then fixed her gaze on Derek, who was now leaning weakly against a wall, trapped. Evelyn gave a small signal towards the corner where Ryan was standing. In a matter of seconds, the large projector screen that had been displaying a welcome message flickered and changed. "My respected family," Evelyn began, her voice loud and clear, silencing the room once more. "Please greet our special guest today. This is Lena, the long-term mistress of my very successful husband. And that sweet child is their son." A collective gasp swept through the room. Several of Derek's aunts covered their mouths in shock. But Evelyn wasn't finished. She pressed a button on the remote control in her hand. The giant screen behind her changed to display an official document from the county recorder's office. The text was enlarged so everyone could read it clearly. "Let's make one thing clear today. The lavish celebration you are enjoying, the expensive food you are eating, and the magnificent house you are standing in, not a single penny came from that liar named Derek. 100% of the money for this house came from my hard work." Evelyn pressed the button again. This time, the screen showed a side-by-side comparison of her authentic signature and the forged signature on the power of attorney document. "And this man you're all so proud of conspired with a corrupt title agent, forging my signature to steal this house and transfer the deed to his mother's name. A pure criminal act committed to provide a free home for his mistress." The screen changed again, now displaying a long list of Derek's bank transactions. Dozens of regular transfers to Lena's account were clearly visible, for substantial amounts. The details showed the money originated from the business capital that Evelyn had consistently provided. The evidence was naked, undeniable, and displayed for everyone present to see. Derek was utterly stripped of his honor in front of the very people whose opinions he cared about most. His lies crumbled. His perfect mask shattered into a million pieces. Derek could no longer contain the shame and rage exploding in his head. His pride was obliterated in front of his uncles, aunts, and cousins, who now stared at him with looks of disgust. Cornered like a wild animal, Derek lost his senses. He clenched his fists, his face red with fury. With a savage growl, he lunged towards Evelyn, raising his right hand high, ready to strike his wife for exposing all his secrets. But before his filthy hand could touch a single thread of Evelyn's hijab, a swift movement intercepted his attack. Two well-built men who had been blending in with the guests in plain clothes suddenly jumped forward. One of them caught Derek's arm in midair, twisting it violently behind his back until Derek screamed in pain. The other man kicked the back of Derek's knee, forcing him to his knees on the floor. The sharp click of metal echoed as a pair of handcuffs locked around Derek's wrists. "Derek, you are under arrest for felony document forgery, fraud, and embezzlement," one of the plainclothes officers stated in a cold, irrefutable tone. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Evelyn's final surprise had brought the curtain down on the charade with a devastating explosion of truth, annihilating the parasitic lives in her house without a trace. The scene in the magnificent living room instantly transformed into an arena of humiliating downfall. Derek, the man who just minutes ago had stood with his chest puffed out in pride, now knelt helplessly on the marble floor, his hands cuffed tightly behind his back. His head was bowed low, hiding the cold sweat and tears of ruin that began to fall. The extended family, who had been singing his praises, now whispered amongst themselves with scorn. His uncles, aunts, and siblings slowly backed away, distancing themselves from Derek as if he were carrying a contagious disease. Overwhelmed with shame, they began to leave one by one, hurrying out of the house without a word, leaving the delicious feast on the long tables to grow cold. Seeing her beloved son treated like a common criminal, Susan seemed to lose her mind. The older woman shrieked hysterically, throwing herself to the floor and trying to pull at the arms of the officers holding Derek. She wailed and sobbed loudly, cursing anyone who dared to touch her son. Her cries echoed off the walls of the luxurious home, creating a sharp irony between the failed celebration and the bitter reality. However, the police officers were trained for such situations. They stood firm, not budging an inch, and warned Susan not to obstruct justice if she didn't want to be taken to the station as well. The threat silenced Susan. She released her grip and turned her gaze to Evelyn. With the last remnants of her strength and arrogance, Susan crawled towards her daughter-in-law. "Evelyn, what have you done? Please, let my son go. You ungrateful wife. Your husband has been so good to you. How dare you shame us in front of the whole family? Tell them to release Derek right now." Susan screamed, the veins in her neck bulging, still trying to twist the facts as if they were the victims. Evelyn looked down at the old woman wailing at her feet with an expression as cold as ice. There was not a shred of pity in her heart. Her heart had died for this parasitic family. "I have done nothing but present the truth to the authorities, Susan. Your son dug his own grave. You were both too greedy, trying to steal my hard-earned money to support the secret family you kept so well hidden," Evelyn said, in a flat but piercing tone. Evelyn then raised her hand, signaling to the private security guards she had hired for the event. Two burly men came down the stairs, carrying several large, pre-packed suitcases. The suitcases were dropped unceremoniously onto the living room floor with a loud thud. They contained all of Derek's and Susan's personal belongings, which Evelyn had packed the night before. She had planned everything meticulously, leaving them no room to argue or ask for more time. "Take your bags and get out of my house. Now. You have no right to set foot on a floor that I paid for with my own money," Evelyn commanded, her voice sharp and echoing with authority in the now emptying room. Derek lifted his disheveled face and looked at his wife with a pleading expression. "Evelyn, please, forgive me. I was wrong. Don't do this to me," he whimpered, his voice hoarse, his pride completely shattered on the floor. In response to his nauseating plea, Evelyn picked up a thick folder from the nearby glass table. She threw it directly at Derek's chest, where it fell open in his lap. "That's a copy of my divorce petition. I'll see you in court. And make sure you bring a good lawyer. Because I'm suing you for the return of every single dollar you ever took from my company," Evelyn declared without mercy. The police officers then pulled Derek to his feet and began escorting him out to their vehicle waiting beyond the gate. Susan cried uncontrollably, dragging her heavy suitcases behind her as she followed her son. In another corner of the room, Lena stood frozen, clutching her young son. She had been watching the chaos unfold in silence. Although shocked to see Derek arrested, a faint, satisfied smile touched the corner of her lips. In her shallow mind, she felt this drama was actually to her advantage. Evelyn was divorcing Derek, which meant the path for her to have him all to herself was now wide open. She imagined that after this police matter was settled, Derek, a businessman with his own company, would come back to her, and they could start a new life. Noticing the sly smile on the mistress's face, Evelyn walked slowly towards Lena. The intimidating aura Evelyn radiated made Lena instinctively step back, hugging her son tighter. Evelyn stopped directly in front of Lena, looking the woman who had ruined her marriage up and down with a condescending gaze. "You think you've won today?" Evelyn whispered, her low voice so menacing that only Lena could hear it. "Take that liar. But just so you know a truth he never told you, the company he was always so proud of ran 100% on my money. This afternoon, I pulled all my capital and blocked all his financial access." Lena frowned, not fully grasping Evelyn's words. But Evelyn's next sentence shattered all the false hopes in the young woman's head. As of this moment, Derek is an unemployed man with nothing but hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to various banks, debt he took out in his own name to maintain his lavish lifestyle. Soon, debt collectors will be hunting him, and anyone who dares to be with him. Evelyn continued with a cynical smile. "Enjoy the rest of your life with a bankrupt man and a fugitive from the banks. I hope your love is enough to pay his installments." Hearing this, Lena's face turned deathly pale. The smile vanished from her lips. Her legs felt weak as she realized she had just gambled her youth on a man who was nothing but a parasite with no assets. She watched with horror as Derek was put into the police car. Without another word, Lena grabbed her son's hand and ran out of the magnificent house as fast as she could, terrified at the thought of the debt that might now ensnare her if she stayed with Derek. Evelyn stood on her porch, watching them all leave with a profound sense of relief. The heavy burden that had been crushing her chest slowly lifted. She let the evening breeze wash over her face, wiping away any remaining traces of sadness. The grand house behind her now felt far more spacious and peaceful without the presence of traitors. That day, Evelyn proved that kindness and gentleness did not equate to weakness. When her limits were crossed, she could transform into a storm that swept away all the filth from her life. The first night in a holding cell was hell for Derek. He huddled in a cramped corner on the cold concrete floor. There was no soft bed, no air conditioning, and no delicious food that Evelyn used to prepare. The stench of urine and stale air assaulted his senses. Over and over, Derek banged his head against the wall, cursing his own foolishness. He realized with deep regret that he had been living like a king purely due to his wife's kindness. He had thrown away a diamond for a worthless pebble. But his regret came too late. The iron bars in front of him were a silent testament to the collapse of the luxurious life he had built on a foundation of lies. He had no money for a lawyer, and none of the relatives who had praised him that afternoon would answer his calls. An equally grim fate befell Susan. After Derek was taken away, she was left alone on the side of the road with her large suitcases. As darkness fell, no taxi would stop for her with so much luggage. Susan tried calling her siblings, the uncles and aunts who had attended the party. She hoped they would take her in for a night or two, but her hopes were crushed. All her relatives refused. Some hung up the moment they heard her voice. Others claimed their houses were full. One even berated her for the immense embarrassment she had caused them. The arrogance Susan had cultivated for years vanished in an instant. She, who had always felt superior to her family, now had to swallow the bitter pill of rejection from her own kin. Desperate and starving, Susan remembered the one person who might help her, Lena. Yes, her son's mistress would surely take her in, she thought. After all, she had always protected Lena from Evelyn's suspicions and delivered her monthly allowance from Derek. With the little money she had left, Susan hired a pickup truck to take her and her luggage to Lena's rental on the outskirts of the city. When she arrived at Lena's place, Susan knocked frantically. She heard frantic shuffling inside, like someone was packing in a hurry. The door was finally flung open. Lena stood there, her face frustrated and angry. Behind her, bags and boxes were packed and ready to go. Susan pleaded with her, explaining she had nowhere else to go and asking to stay for a while so they could figure out how to free Derek together. But Lena blocked her way. "You think this is a charity shelter? I'm busy. I'm moving out tonight." Lena snapped, her tone dripping with disrespect. Susan was stunned. The woman who had always been so sweet and fawning was suddenly cruel. She reminded Lena that she was her mother-in-law and that Derek was in jail. Lena just laughed a cold, mocking laugh. "Love? You think I want to live in poverty with a bankrupt man? His wife told me everything. Derek has nothing. His company is finished, and he has massive debts. I'm not getting dragged down with your son. I was with him because he promised me a luxury house and a big monthly allowance. That's all gone now. Why would I stay? You gold-digging, ungrateful woman. My son provided for you. Susan shrieked. With what money? Money he stole from his legal wife? Don't act so holy. You're just as greedy as I am, Lena retorted. Now get out of here. I'm leaving to find a new man who's actually rich, not a parasite like your son. Lena slammed the door in Susan's face, leaving her standing alone on the dark porch. Susan's heart shattered. Lena's insults hit her hard, making her realize that no one around her and Derek had ever been sincere. They were only there for the money they could leech from Evelyn. Now that the source was gone, only suffering remained. That night, a torrential downpour began. Susan had no shelter. She wept under the heavy rain, her body shivering from the cold, her clothes and suitcases soaked in dirty street water. Dazed from cold and hunger, she wandered aimlessly until she found herself back in front of the grand gates of Evelyn's house. Her shame was overcome by the bone-chilling cold. She clung to the iron bars, crying and screaming Evelyn's name, begging for mercy. A security guard emerged from the guardhouse, followed by 2 large, snarling guard dogs. He shone a bright flashlight in Susan's face. Get out of here. Mrs. Evelyn gave strict orders. Anyone who disturbs the peace will be reported to the police for trespassing. Leave before I release these dogs, the guard threatened. Susan stumbled backward in fear, falling into a muddy puddle. The dogs continued to bark ferociously, making it clear that this palace was now permanently closed to traitors. Sobbing, Susan was left alone on the dark, deserted street, a rat who had truly lost her trash heap, discarded and unwanted by the world. The legal process moved with a speed Derek never imagined. Thanks to the comprehensive evidence prepared by Evelyn and Ryan's legal prowess, the case was fast-tracked. The criminal and divorce proceedings ran almost simultaneously, cornering Derek from both sides. Day after day, Derek sat in the defendant's chair, listening as his lies were stripped bare before the judge. He became a withered, pathetic figure. With his assets frozen by Evelyn, he couldn't afford a decent lawyer. The state-appointed public defender was helpless against Ryan's mountain of irrefutable evidence. In the criminal trial, witnesses from the county and document experts confirmed the forgery. Surveillance footage, bank statements, and the fraudulent power of attorney were all laid out. Derek was found guilty of conspiracy, felony forgery, and grand larceny. The judge's gavel fell, sentencing him to years in prison. A few days later, he faced the final divorce hearing. As he was led into the family court in handcuffs, his eyes met Evelyn's. She looked elegant and powerful, her gaze devoid of the love it once held. Ryan sat beside her, an intimidating professional presence. The hearing was brief. The judge granted all of Evelyn's demands. The marriage was dissolved. All assets, including the house and the company, were ruled to be 100% Evelyn's sole property. Derek was entitled to nothing, as he had made no legitimate financial contribution. Hearing the verdict, Derek's composure shattered. He dropped to his knees, straining against the heavy grip of the bailiffs who immediately restrained him. Tears streaming down his face, he looked toward Evelyn, sobbing and begging for forgiveness, for a second chance, promising he would change. Evelyn was unmoved. She looked down at him from a distance with profound disgust. Leaning forward slightly, she looked him straight in the eye and spoke in a low, sharp whisper that cut him to the core. Your tears are as fake as the signature you forged. Don't you ever dare say my name with that filthy mouth again. You deserve where you are. Enjoy the rest of your life behind bars, because in the outside world, you have no one left. The bailiffs dragged a screaming Derek out of the courtroom. As he was being led to the prison transport vehicle, he saw a figure across the street. It was Lena. She wasn't there for him. She was laughing, arm in arm with another man, walking away without a single glance in his direction. It was the final, soul-crushing blow. He entered the van a completely broken man. Months passed. In prison, Derek was a target for bullies, forced to do menial, humiliating tasks. Susan ended up as a dishwasher in a greasy roadside diner, her hands raw and her body stooped, constantly berated by her boss. Lena, after being conned by a new man who took all her money, was now on the run from loan sharks. In stark contrast, Evelyn's life soared. Freed from the parasites, her business boomed. She opened new branches, and her profits skyrocketed. She renovated the house, erasing every memory of Derek. One peaceful evening, Ryan came to visit. He brought the latest glowing financial reports and a large bouquet of fresh roses. They sat on the second-floor balcony, watching the sunset. All the legal matters are 100% settled, Ryan said, smiling. And according to these reports, your company just had its most profitable quarter ever. You proved you don't need a parasitic man to succeed. Evelyn smiled, a genuine smile of deep happiness. She thanked him, telling him that without his help, she might still be trapped in her heartbreak. Thanks to him, all the weeds had been cleared from her life. Ryan returned her gaze with an expression that hinted at a new, more beautiful chapter for both of them. Evelyn sipped her warm tea, looking out at the horizon as the setting sun cast a golden glow on her face. The burden of her past was gone. She had weathered the worst storm of her life and emerged the absolute victor. On her magnificent balcony, Evelyn stood tall, not just as a survivor, but as a queen, fully restored to the throne of her own castle.